is the idea of this episode that really we should just unban balance. Hey everybody, we're back from the grave. I'm sorry.
I am too.
We're not going to stop.
Yeah.
Affronting your ears.
So welcome
around twice a month.
Around, yeah.
Yeah, approximately. On average, twice a month.
Approaching twice a month.
Yeah, one to three times a month. You know.
Really more like 1 to 2.
Yeah. 3 times if you got one the last month.
Yeah.
Sometimes. But I just wanted to apologize that I, Elijah Samuelson, have been a little busy with school stuff. It's the end of the semester and been catching up on things. As I was telling you earlier, Spencer, yesterday, I had to do a research participation thing in which I was psychologically tortured. So that was fun. But yeah, I wonder if anyone listening knows what a remote associates test is. So pretty much, this is, you get 3 words, and you're supposed to find one word that links with the other words. So for example, it would say lounge, hour, and napkin, and you should guess cocktail because cocktail lounge, cocktail hour, cocktail napkin. It's like a word that you can put with another word to make a phrase or another word.
For all 3 of them.
Yeah. And so I sit down and I start taking this test, and he gives me about 5 to 6 minutes to finish it, and there's 10 sets of words on there to fill out, and I get 2 out of 10.
Giga Chad.
And he comes back, and he gives me the answer key, and it has a thing on it that says, your scores versus others at this college. 90% of students at this college scored higher than 8 out of 10 on this remote associates test, and of those 90%, half of those students scored a 10 out of 10 on this test. Scoring a 9 out of 10 or higher is a good indication of an average or higher than average IQ. So I was like, God damn, I'm mentally handicapped.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, and then he leaves for a couple more minutes, and he's like, so just do whatever, hang out on your phone or play on your phone, whatever, I'm going to go and do something. And then I sit there for a few minutes just thinking, wow, I'm the dumbest person alive. And looking at the answers, too, I was like, man, a couple of these I feel like I could have guessed, but some were pretty tough. Yeah. I think I showed you the test, Spencer, and you got one that I didn't get initially.
But I might not have gotten the ones that you did get, so.
But yeah, it's a tough test, but then he comes back and gives me a thing to fill out about like how I'm feeling in that moment. And I sort of start to get the idea, because I was already like thinking maybe the writing on the answer sheet was bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Maybe.
Because I know it's an experiment, like maybe, but you don't want to think that, because then if that was true and you were that dumb and you don't believe that, you look dumber.
Yeah.
But yeah, he comes back and I fill out the thing, and then he tells me, it was meant to be failed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, awesome. I still feel terrible. But yeah, not what you would expect out of a communication study. Like, that was deep psychological distress and trauma, because...
Yeah, and you were telling me earlier that the point of the study was to figure out if people would cope by going on social media and stuff like that. So...
Which, I mean, that doesn't make any goddamn sense, because I go on Magic Twitter and I just want to kill myself harder.
Yeah, blow my brains out.
No, I don't mean that, but yeah. Sorry about the rant anecdote. I just thought this was a funny story about... Yeah, the description of the study said it was about social media. And so I was a little confused when I sat down and started being tortured.
But, Eli, one thing that I remember you told me was after he came back in the room and had you fill out some things... He was asking you how many YouTube subscribers you had and how many Twitter followers you had, and all you could think of was,
I had to fill out the thing, yeah.
Not enough, baby. Get on that Twitter grind, gamers.
Yeah, I had to fill out a thing that was like, how many followers or subscribers do you have on these certain social medias? And for like Twitter, I was like, 20-ish. Like, we don't have a lot of Twitter followers. Facebook, I've got a few friends. And then YouTube, I'm like, 460. Which is not a lot, but that's not nothing. Like, that's kind of like, if you saw somebody like put that out, you'd be like, what are they doing?
Yeah, what are they doing? But yeah, I think, Eli, we should try this experiment at the local game store and maybe see if we can make anybody's day ruined like that man made your day ruined.
Yeah, it was a fun experience.
Okay, Eli, I'm going to give you 3 commanders, and you have to tell me what card fits in all 3 decks. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to do that.
That would be a good test, actually. That'd be kind of a fun thing to do. We'll have to keep that in mind for the next extravaganza.
Yeah, exactly.
If you guys don't know, the EDH Takes EDH Extravaganza is a potentially yearly
we've had one
thing we put together where we go out and play a lot of Commander and just hang out and
have we got some things planned. Like, I think last time we did some little trivia night kind of shit that we put together, some memes. We gave some prizes away. I think we're gonna have our buddy do some stand-up comedy.
Yeah, we're always trying.
Yeah. But just a fun little thing. We posted a picture on Twitter like a year ago, so you could probably find a picture of it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, why don't we start talking about some Magic cards and Magic things?
Well, yeah, actually, that study though, that was a good thing, because what it really did is sometimes, as people and Magic players especially, we tend to do this thing kind of, I think it's called the better than average effect, where we think we're smarter than the average person.
Sure.
And sometimes it's good to have moments that really humble you and equalize you with the rest of the world, and remind you that you're not as smart as you think you are. That's not necessarily what this is about, but we're going to talk about the idea of balancing out games and equalizing things.
Mm-hmm. Because especially in 2022, the year of our Lord and Savior, it's more and more Commander's becoming a format of like fast starts and like even quicker games. I know sometimes people will refer to the game as like, oh, it's like a turn 6 format kind of thing for like casual, Commander.
Do you feel like, Spencer, it's changed from being, does this person have a turn 1 or like an early Soul Ring or Mana Crypt, to does this person have an early good card from this recent Commander set?
That's it kind of do be like that, actually.
And if they just keep playing those newer cards, like, oh, here's their, I mean, not super new at this point, but like Dockside Extortionist, Jessica's Will, stuff like that.
Yeah. It feels like as you keep getting more in your deck, the odds that like every game turns out like that is even higher. So yeah, I do think that's the way that things are trending, but I don't think it's inherently bad. It's just different, right?
Right, and the thing is, a lot of those cards, like newer cards, aren't always necessarily very expensive, and everyone in theory has equal access to them. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, the games might be getting faster, but they're getting faster for everybody.
Yeah.
They should be mostly on the same playing field. But within the individual game, somebody's got to be the person who gets off to that lead and that fast start.
It's very rare that somebody isn't, significantly ahead of the rest of the table by turn 3 or 4. I mean, even if it's like not like a crazy difference, someone is pretty clearly ahead most of the time.
And I'm sure most people would say, well, Commander has the self-correcting nature where the first person in first place oftentimes doesn't win that game because everyone is the first person to...
Yeah.
They're the first person to get focused on. Mm-hmm. Everyone's going to turn on them. But I think you and I have both played games where that happens and people try to do that, but it still doesn't end up mattering.
Well, and depending on how good your deck is or how strong your start is, compared to the rest of the table, a lot of times you're just able to kind of deal with that, the 2 or 3 players coming at you, honestly.
Yeah, I remember an example of a game I played. I think I was playing my Bruce and Elena deck and played a turn 1 Mana Crypt into Jessica's Will for 7 mana and 6 mana Ugin the Ineffable. Turn 1.
That's a bit hard to beat. And
obviously everyone targets. I think I did end up winning that game though, because that's just like, how do you deal with that? I played a game last Friday with a new friend I made. Really nice guy, but he was playing his Kenrith, the Return King deck.
Yep.
Turn 1 he plays a Mana Dork.
Mm-hmm.
Turn 2, Soul Ring, Smothering Tithe.
Yeah.
And I played a turn 1 Mana Dork too, so luckily 2 turns later I was able to beast within the Smothering Tithe, but he still got 2 treasures off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think not the next turn, but the turn after, he plays a Zendikar Resurgent, like turn 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And I played a Decimate, destroyed his Zendikar Resurgent, his Soul Ring, his land, and his Commander, and he still won that game.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have games like that, even if you are like practicing you're like individually proper threat assessment, playing the right cards yourself.
Yeah.
But what we're going to talk about today is like what else can you do?
Yeah, what other ways do you have?
What are the options? Like, because sometimes it feels untenable.
Mm-hmm.
So, one thing I want to talk about. So, this is a sort of double-edged sword, I think, because politics is a tool in your bag, but it's also goddamn one of the most annoying things in Commander sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially when you're doing it like too much or too proactively.
Yeah.
But really, if I'm sitting down at a game and I'm looking at my two friends who are kind of like new Commander players, my buddy who plays some real jank sometimes, me with my pretty good Kresh deck, like I think it's okay, but it's not like if we forced ourselves to using the much outdated 1 to 10 model, Spencer.
Yeah, of course.
Which we've fixed. If you haven't watched our video, we created a much better power level scale.
Yeah.
But I'd maybe say it's like a 6 or a 7.
Sure, some 6.5.
I don't want to say
like
it's a 7. You can't say it's a 7.
You can't say it's a 7.
Maybe like a 6.
Sure.
It's got some good stuff in there, but I mean, I'm just saying 6 because, everyone thinks better than average, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's an okay deck, but I'd see the Kenrith deck and I'd be like, you know what? That is just a really strong card.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe at the start of the game I should have been like, we should do something about that. And definitely after he played a turn 2 Smothering Tithe, I was like, we should do something about that.
But maybe, like you're saying, maybe you should have said something beforehand.
Do you think maybe sometimes it's too far to say, guys, if we don't all go in on this person, we are going to lose the game. He is just going to win.
I think, that's definitely a fair thing to say. It's sometimes that is the case, right? And when it's the case, I think it might not always be so obvious. So I think it's okay to point it out, but also you probably want to do it in a way that's not like underselling yourself, because
right.
If you're saying that, but then you're like trying to like snatch the lead up from them, it kind of comes across as a little bit like...
Oh, exactly. That's the difficult part about it, and that's why I oftentimes don't like doing that. And you play against some people, and they really do be like, somebody plays anything, they're like, that's a threat.
Yeah.
That needs to be dealt with. Anything that they don't play, notably.
Yeah, of course.
Like, that needs to be dealt with. You guys got to do something about that, and then they don't do anything. But I think it comes across better, like, in my situation where something needed to be done, and I was the person doing everything about it, being like, hey, really, like...
I need help.
Trust me, guys. Like, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is here. Whereas I think some people might just say, oh, wow, we really got to do something about that, and then just wait for everyone else to spend their resources.
They might be like, we've got to deal with that, but really what they mean is you've got to deal with that.
And meanwhile, they're just looking at their like handful of answers that they really know they don't actually need to use. They're just trying to get people to like spend out cards.
Like maybe they're saving them to protect their stuff or something.
Right.
Yeah. That's the tricky thing about politics in Commander, is that ultimately you are trying to win the game, right? Mm-hmm. But it can be a bit, I want to say maybe a little bit of a buzzword term, but it feels kind of bad faith when, especially for the person that like is out to a lead, and then you're like, everyone, we got to come together and squash them, but you're really kind of got like this ulterior motive that you're going to jump up in the lead and take their place, and then they kind of feel bad because they maybe don't have a great game, kind of because of you manipulating everyone to get them.
Yeah, and people really don't like to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And feel like you're talking down to them because they don't understand what the situation is. Mm-hmm. But really, especially if you're playing with a newer player, somebody who's new to the format, they really might not know. So it's a tough balancing act of like not wanting to make them feel dumb, but also wanting to help them have a better game for themselves.
It's a little bit like the prisoner's dilemma, where if you and I, Eli, are two players politicking, if we're both going at it in good faith, we can have like much healthier politics. But if but I'm always going to be thinking that you're going to be trying to get one over on me, so that I'm going to try to get one over on you, stuff like that. So that's why I try to politic in a way where I'm not trying to get something over on someone. I'm trying to like I know it's hard to believe that, right? But I really do try to like make deals that, even if they are one-sided for me, they're not so one-sided, right? They're to take you into account.
So Spencer, I'm in this human communication class, and it's pretty basic stuff, but we're going through all these different communication theories, and in the textbook it lines out what the assumptions of each theory are. So, like, the basic assumptions we make about human nature for, like, why people act in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think a universal assumption of politics is it's always to benefit the person bringing forth the politics in some way?
I think that is a pretty. I mean, that's accurate. Like, it's probably a pretty accurate heuristic to use, right? That, like, if someone's coming to the table with something, they want something, right?
Yeah, I mean,
that's fair.
Command Zone says that all the time, and that's a good thing to remember. But it could be hard to, like, you can't assume that somebody's not doing it for their own benefit.
Yeah,
is what I'm saying. Like, we were talking about the idea of trying to politic for the actual benefit of, like, the whole rest of the table.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people are conditioned, and rightly so, to know that that's not the case.
That also makes it hard to make a fair deal, because if I come at you with in actual good faith, and I'm, like, trying to look out for you and I together, you're going to assume that I'm trying to get a little bit over on you, so you'll maybe try to push me to give more than what is actually equal, if I'm coming with an equal, position. So that's why it incentivizes me to not come at you with a fair deal. So that's it's setting me up to fail and you up to fail. So yeah, that's a little bit of
This is why Commander with Strangers is also, like, psychological torture.
Yeah, because you just think that everyone's out to get you.
Yeah, do I assume the better of people, or do I assume that...
Do I assume the good of humanity?
Yeah, do I assume the good of Magic players?
Yeah.
No, actually, I want to not be so negative all the time. I've had a lot of good experiences going to the game store lately, and I'm meeting some pretty cool people, so...
A lot of this stuff is purely, like theoretical and hypothetical, like... If people are, just, like, being chill and making good politics and good deals, like, there you go, A+, great.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, just be cognizant of what you're saying, how other people might interpret your actions, even if you don't mean it that way.
Yeah, but back to what you were saying about proactive politics, to put a pin on it, I really do think that in certain situations with, some really powerful commanders or some cards that you can kind of foresee how they will take over a game, it is fair to kind of say something beforehand, before they get out of control, or maybe even if someone has a strategy in their deck, to be like, hey guys, just so you know, if things get off to a bad start with him or whatever, like, we have to, come together or something. That's probably okay to do, I think. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and a lot of times that's just how it be. It's one of your many ways you have of kind of fighting back against a fast start in Commander.
Yeah, because if you don't start saying something right away, it's probably going to be too late.
Because people are already making their plans for what they're going to do next turn based on whatever they have now. And
yeah, like, imagine you have somebody off that fast start, and you have a whole turn rotation go by where people aren't viewing them as, like, the threat, and they're spending removal, or they have the option to remove something, and they don't because they want to play their own game, right?
Yeah, or maybe they ramp, or maybe they play a card draw, like a Phyrexian Arena, instead of, like, a ramp. If they play their ramp spell, they could play a board wipe next turn or something when it was necessary, right? Something like that. Like, it can, knowing as soon as possible can change, like, the way that the course of the game, like the different diverging lines of how people play. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and another thing about that is if you mention to someone too late, they might already be dead set on a play, and Magic players and also just humans are very it's often hard to admit that you were wrong or to change away from a path you're going. Mm-hmm. So if you've got like a game plan in your mind and someone says something that might alter it, you're less likely to kind of just bend to that game plan change, right? Like, you're like, okay, no, I'm playing my commander on turn 4 off of these 2 ramp pieces or something. I'm not going to sidestep myself to deal with this if that's what I'm playing my game for, right? So helping people make their decisions earlier, probably good, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, next we're going to talk about board wipes, because we had just mentioned that, and those are a really good way of equalizing some things in the game.
So to quote / kind of paraphrase or change the quote, the thumbnail image we're going to use for this video is the Portal Second Age Vengeance card, which, if you're watching the video, you've seen this thumbnail. It's a lady with a big old gun standing over like a hill giant or like an ogre or something.
Yeah.
And the flavor text is, a bullet renders all sizes equal. So a board wipe is like a bullet in this situation. It renders all sizes equal.
That's true.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Unless you're scumbag like myself that likes to play one-sided board wipes.
Yeah.
Cyclonic Rift is not the kind of board wipe we're talking about here.
That's not really a bullet that renders all sides equal. That's like a machine gun. Just
yeah, it's like an airstrike.
Yeah. Not away from my territory.
It's not.
It's like you've got like a nuclear fallout chamber that no one else has. That's what you got.
Mm-hmm.
But no, the thing interesting about board wipes is that there are situations where board wipes can fully equalize a game, and there are situations where board wipes just won't do enough, right? Mm-hmm. They could even hurt your allies more than they hurt your enemies, right? Or another, like, depending on how somebody gets off to a fast start, it can be very, very different. Because, like, if somebody's fast start is, like, land ramp a ton and, like, draw a bunch of cards, a board wipe, one board wipe later, they're still going to be able to, like, deploy more threats and keep, do more engine stuff.
Yeah.
But if a lot of their stuff is just to the board, it really can be very equalizing.
When some people play decks that really are just about putting lands and, like, mana sources into play, and then, like, building a massive amount of card advantage in their hand so that they can present a win off of just cards in their hand. And so those decks are hard to play against, because you could board wipe them, and if they still have a certain amount of lands in play, they're just going to play everything back out again the next turn, or be better off for it.
Those are the situations where I think maybe the proactive politics, or very tricky cards, like maybe a wheel, I mean, that's probably not a great way to do it, but, like, maybe even discard effects can stop them somewhat, and then discard effects, and then maybe taxing ways to stop them from drawing more cards or something, right? Would be the way to handle it. But in a lot of cases, board wipes are really a way to kind of pull someone by the reins, honestly. Grab someone by the reins, I suppose, is the better way to say that.
Yeah, I think you and I, Spencer, like playing decks that play a lot to the board.
Yeah.
And could have really strong, fast starts, but if somebody plays a very timely board wipe,
yeah,
it at least sets you back for a couple turns. I think maybe the problem is, like we both probably have a couple decks that could get board wiped from the lead and still come back from that. But still, even within that, you've got time. You get an extra turn or two.
Like you were saying, Eli, you and I think we do this by design. Like, if Eli and I wanted to, we could build decks that were like, a board wipe isn't really going to do that much to us, right? Like, not trying to, like, stroke our ego or whatever. I'm just saying, like,
well, like that kind of deck that wins from the hand.
Yeah,
saying,
we
right?
could
like,
do that.
Like, yeah, you can play more combos. Like, I've got one or two decks that play, like, a lot of combos in them, and I think you've got your Pub Stomper Aurelia deck.
No, but really, like, I just built a new deck, and it's like really like it really gets set behind like it doesn't make a lot of mana permanently, like not like land ramp. And if, like, I had a game the other day where someone played an austere command, kill all, small creatures and all artifacts, and, like, I was all of a sudden going from first place to last place because I just have less mana than everyone else.
Well, and it can feel shitty to get blown out by a board wipe like that, but I feel like that kind of magic, to me, it feels more interactive, and it feels like it gives my opponents more agency in the game.
Because I wouldn't want it, like, if you get off to a strong lead, you don't want just to be able to keep that lead no matter what until the game ends, right?
Yeah, and I like playing strong cards, but I don't want to play, like, a strong deck against, like, somewhat newer opponents, or, like, people playing, like, slightly weaker decks and have them feel like they just can't do anything that game.
Yeah, like,
we preface that sometimes. I'm like, this is a strong deck. It could have a strong start, but really, all you gotta do is, like, some good spot removal, like a board wipe or something, and man, you'll knock me back.
Yeah, like,
it'll be okay.
I might be able to claw my way back in, but, like, I won't be in a position to win, or like in a position where I can protect everything, and you know what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. Like, it's you'll put me in a position where I'm back to equal with you guys, or even less. Like, you've achieved the equality that you were looking for, the equalizer.
And I suppose there is an argument that really a board wipe doesn't leave everyone in an equal position, because it depends on how many cards they've played out from their hand and how much they've committed to the board without refilling their hand. So say somebody is really ahead on board, but they've got all these artifacts and they played out all their mana rocks from their hand. They're, like, down to jazz hands, or maybe one or two cards in hand, and somebody plays a destroy all non-land permanents.
Yeah,
that person, it's not equal, really.
It's not equal. But I think when we're talking about equalizers, our goal is to bring the person in, like, at the top closer to the rest of the people, or even, like, it's kind of like Oh my god, it's like if you're climbing, like you're doing like partner climbing, where you got like two people hooked up to each other, and it'd be like if you kind of like pulled the rope to pull one person down to fall beneath you, but like other people might also stumble, but like
I think it's really only equal if you're playing with the sort of people, like I think everyone has this situation happen sometimes where you're winning the game and you get dealt with, and people still keep beating the shit out of you afterwards.
Yeah.
But if you're playing with people whose like threat assessment you trust and like who can like see that sort of stuff, and you eat that early board wipe and you're like down a lot of cards, I feel like most people will shift away from you and onto the new person in the lead, in which case that kind of is an equalizer, because now you're not the one getting targeted anymore, so you've kind of got a couple of turns to build back up, maybe
to start climbing again, right? They'll let off the
unless you've presented yourself as just the kind of person that if given even an inch, like you will abuse it.
Yeah.
Then in which case they're probably still gonna have to beat you until you're dead. But
and that's the shame, or not the shame, but like that's what's it is a shame that some commanders, like the ones that everyone wants to talk about, of course, like like Chulane or like Corvold or something. These are decks where oftentimes you can like they can be in the lead, you can equalize them and like pull them down, but then you still need to like counter their commander, otherwise they're just going to win again, right?
Yeah.
And it always feels bad because you're kind of stopping them from playing, but you really don't have a choice with like a card like Chulane, right? Like it's the way it is. If Chulane is on the field, like they're going to put 9 lands into play or just win.
Yeah, it's too bad that the Wizards made all those people play Chulane.
Yeah. Shoot. But was Chulane a brawl deck?
Yeah.
Man, they really made that a pre-con, huh?
Yeah, they really made some of like the strongest commanders in the freaking brawl decks.
So new players could buy the broken commanders and get stomped on because everyone would target removal them.
Man, just think how like bad it must feel to be like the brawl team. Like you were given so much ammunition like to throw at the brawl format to try and make it appealing.
Yeah.
And it just did not work because it was such a bad idea.
Feels bad, man.
Like, yeah, you ever have a bad idea like so bad that throwing in like Shocklands and Smothering Tithe into the precons for $30.
Yeah, man. I remember buying that Alayla precon just because Smothering Tithe and the Watery Grave, yeah.
Good deal.
And I wanted to play that commander, so there you go.
I did the same thing, yeah.
And it was worth it.
Exactly, but it wasn't for Brawl.
No, it wasn't for Brawl.
Get the Arcane Signet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was like $9 at the time or something crazy, yeah. Before they started printing and everything, which probably a good thing to do for a card that ubiquitous, right?
But before we move on from board wipes, there's a new board wipe in New Capenna, Streets of New Capenna, that I want to talk about, that I think is a pretty good kind of equalizer board wipe.
Oh yeah, this is a really cool card.
Structural Assault. It's a 5-mana red board wipe. Not necessarily. It destroys all artifacts, but then it deals damage to each creature for every artifact that was put into a graveyard from play that turn. So like even if somebody sacks all their treasures in response, it's still going to deal a ton of damage.
Yep.
That I think is a
pretty cool equalizing card, right?
Pretty good equalizer.
Similar, like we were talking about Austere Command a bit earlier. Cards that will kill all, creatures and then something else. Probably artifact being the most important, right?
Spencer, aside from like some of the more powerful green decks, do you feel like inequality in a game is almost always the result of artifacts?
That's probably a pretty good point, right? Like someone has a ton of mana rocks or something in play, or some broken like Panharmonicon type of thing, right?
Yeah, and I don't even mean like turn 1 Soul Ring or Mana Crypt, just like mana rocks are good.
Well, yeah, like if someone curves out with Mana Rock on 2 into Mana Rock on 3, 4-mana Mana Rock that taps for 3 mana, right? Like they're gonna have 7 or 8 mana next turn, right?
I mean, they're one of the more efficient. I guess maybe the main point is just mana inequality is probably one of the biggest causes of power disparity in a game.
Like card inequality like does matter, but card inequality often doesn't lead to the like super quick blowout stuff, right? Because if you got 5 cards and I got 3 cards, I'm still gonna play the game. I can play my commander. I can top deck stuff and play it. Where same as you. But if we both have 5 cards and you have 12 mana and I have 6 mana, you're just going to be doing twice as much stuff, or even a lot of the times even more than twice as much stuff, because having more mana allows you to set up more things faster.
Right. The mana is kind of a filter for the amount of things you're able to play per turn.
Yeah.
like for instance, there was one game I played a couple of years ago in Alexandria. Somebody had a Rhystic Study, but they didn't have a lot of lands, and they didn't have a lot of mana. And I hate Rhystic Study, Spencer, as we all should.
But let me guess, you blew up something else besides the Rhystic Study.
Well, I was hitting my land drops, and eventually I got my Strip Mine and my Sun Titan, and I figure,
based.
Sorry, Dawson, that I did that to you, but
well, you can draw more cards.
That's
your ability to cast spells. No, but like I was saying earlier, though, it's really rough because at least with mana advantages, mana advantages will kind of compound and snowball on itself. Because let's say you have 4 mana and I have 2 mana, right? You're going to be able to play a card that gets you 2 more mana next turn, whereas I only play a card that gets me 1 more mana next turn. So like a 2 mana rock versus a 4 mana rock, right? So if you have more mana earlier, you're able to assemble like a huge board or enough mana or permanents to do things as early as like turn 4 or 5 or something, right? Whereas me, who didn't have like... That's why early mana like production can be very scary in Commander.
Yeah, especially if you see somebody playing a Commander that adds a lot of mana.
Yeah.
Like,
it's consistent.
Goddamn, my Elena, that's insane. Like, I can go from, like, turn 3, like, playing, like, a 3 mana rock, turn 4, play her.
Yeah.
And then the next turn, it's just you have access
10
to, like,
mana or something, right?
Close to, like, 20 mana, like, where like you can play, like a 6-drop or like, not necessarily, like, 20 mana, more like a lot. Like, more than...
Yeah,
like twice what you should have for that turn. Like,
yeah, or more if you have it, depending on what you put out. Like if you can get to a point where you're like doubling your mana, and I don't mean like mana doubling enchantments, but like you were saying, like Elena, like you were talking about, if you're doubling your mana on turn 4 versus doubling your mana on turn 5, like it's probably going to be doubling about the same amount, right?
Spencer, wins mana doubler in the command zone.
Probably they're gonna make the God Emperor do that from in the Warhammer set. That'd be kind of epic.
He'd be too OP.
Yeah. Well, he should be, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Up until the point where he gets killed and then has to live in a chair forever.
They should make him where he just like can't move, and like they should make the chair version.
Well, if they made that version of him, you'd have to sacrifice because what is it? They need to sacrifice 2,000 souls to him every day. So like on your upkeep, lose 20 life or sacrifice the god.
That'd be hilarious. Or you have to like. It's like those old the Elder Dragons that you had to pay like 3 mana on your upkeep or sacrifice them.
Oh my god, yeah, he would have something.
But he'd have
that.
like you gotta like discard 2 cards, pay like 4 mana, sacrifice like a creature and a planeswalker.
Oh, so he'd be Lord of Trestlehorn.
Exactly. But on your upkeep every turn.
Oh my
Giga
god.
Chad. Well, do you want to talk about like I know we were talking about board wipes and stuff, but like other ways that you can kind of do equalizing effects in Commander?
Yeah, so we were talking before the show about cards that really like scale with the power of the game and how it's going, and sometimes they can be very abusable, but I think cloning effects and copying and stealing even sometimes can be a good way to match what your opponents are doing.
So like let's say your opponent plays like a Zendikar Resurgent, right, on like turn 4 or something crazy. And then you play your Clever Impersonator and copy the Zendikar Resurgent. Well, you didn't really do any... Like, you weren't off to a crazy start, but all of a sudden you've kind of matched yourself with them a little bit.
Yeah, and then you have just two people that are very scared and unhappy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they can play the board wipe and fix everything up for you.
Exactly.
You just need to force their hand. That's better than the proactive politics, right, Spencer? You just make a bigger problem and force somebody to... What would feel bad, though, is if you do the clone their thing and they decide to blow up yours instead of the original one.
Oh, no. But yeah, similarly, like, you got clones, you got, like, reanimation from other people's graveyards. So, like, if someone plays, like, I don't know, like a Terrastodon or something, and then it dies, you can reanimate it to your field and then blow up 3 things from the player that needs to be dealt with, right?
Yeah.
Like, stuff like that.
Like using their own toys against them.
Yeah, or, like, stealing stuff like we were talking about. Like, if they play something for a lot of mana... and you can steal it for relatively less mana, like you're kind of taking advantage of the fact that they are ahead, right?
Yeah, and I think this is mostly a good thing to bring up from like a financial aspect, is a lot of the clone and stealing cards are way, way cheaper than the actual good card.
Yeah. Also, another thing to bring up is the the copying spells effects like Dualcaster Mage, or like even stealing spells, stuff like Narset's Reversal, where it puts, so if your opponent plays like an extra turn spell or something, and you can like stop that for a while and get your own extra turn spell for 2 mana.
One of the coolest things I can do in my Feather deck, Spencer, is blink a Recruiter at instant speed to get Dualcaster Mage.
Yeah. And then you can Dualcaster Mage someone's like Exsanguinate for the lethal, and then you actually kill everyone instead.
Oh my god. We love Dualcaster Mage.
We love Dualcaster Mage here, yeah. Well, what other do you want to talk about besides like cloning and copying and stealing and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, I want to say before moving on, like, copying, cloning, and stealing, like, while it is kind of like fair due, I mean, you brought the weapons to the table. Like we talked about in Blue Needs to Be Stopped. It is also insanely powerful, so be prepared. Like, if you do too much of that, like, you're gonna just go from being the...
Especially when Blue can do it for, like, 2 mana in Phantasmal Image. You can just be like, I just make my own Zendikar Resurgent for 2 mana, or my own Dockside Extortionist, or my own, Sepulchral Primordial.
And we got a new kind of 2 mana clone now with that Imposter mech.
Oh, yeah, the one where you have to crew it, but it's... Right, that one?
Yeah, you gotta crew it to, like, have it attack and block as a creature, but, like, it's still 2 mana, get the ETB and abilities of the best creature.
You could, like, Blightsteel or something. I guess even Cursed Mirror and Red can do that sort of thing, too, right?
Yeah, actually, Red is
and Hate Mirage?
Shouldn't forget, Red has a similar sort of ability. Like, not permanently, but you can,
You can still get good ETBs, yeah.
Mob Rule, you can Insurrection.
Yeah, man, I guess just like in a game where someone's going crazy and making a huge board, like a Mob Rule can kind of take the wind under their sails and kill them with it.
Yeah, that's a great one to mention for this.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, yeah, do you want to move on to... more, this is sort of a recent thing, I feel like. It's a symmetrical card advantage. By that we don't mean like a Wheel of Fortune, like everyone draw this.
Yeah.
It's I draw cards and you over there, you specifically, one person, not everybody. Don't make everyone draw cards, everyone.
Yeah,
do it.
I'm not a fan of like Howling Mine effects and stuff like that.
Don't play Miko Koro in every white deck, okay? Don't
do it.
That is very bad card disadvantage.
The reason, and I just want to point out before we move on to that real quick, is that one of the reasons those effects are kind of bad is because, like we were saying earlier, usually someone is ahead, right?
Yeah.
And if you're fueling everybody to deal with the person that's ahead, you don't also want to be fueling the person that's ahead with your card draw, right?
Yeah, either somebody is ahead, really ahead, or there's somebody who's just like, man, if I just had the right card right now, I would be destroying this game.
Yeah, like if there was a Miko Koro that was for like, if it was only for 3 players, I'm not saying it would be good, but it would be better, right?
There's a thought there, yeah.
Because maybe you could all team up on one person, as is tend to happen sometimes. But whatever. That being said, I do prefer a lot of the you and me, 2 players, right?
Yeah, so I think the most classic and perhaps most controversial
trade routes. I'm just kidding. That's banned.
Would be Secret Rendezvous.
Yeah, this was the iconic card that got a lot of people... I'm mad right now. I need my mommy.
So you have those people.
Yeah.
The virgins.
Yeah.
And then you have Richard from MTG Goldfish, Commander Clash.
The Chad. Who's like, Secret Rendezvous goes in every one of my white decks, even if they have blue. And then you've got us in the middle.
Yeah. Richard is he's a real, like, enigma, because the man is either a genius or insane.
Yeah, but the thing with Richard is that he'll sound insane, but then he'll, like, get you to question your own beliefs. Like, wait a second, are you actually a genius right now?
Well, and I don't watch a lot of, like, Commander Clash on MTG Goldfish, but anytime I'm listening to their podcasts, they make it sound like the man's a god. Like, he cannot be killed. Like, he's...
They're like, he always wins every game with a bad deck.
Like, he's Achilles, like, of the Commander playing community. Like, he's just, like, some kind of demigod. The man is just, like, insanely skilled.
He's Hercules, maybe.
I believe him,
Yeah. But, yeah, it's interesting because if your goal in a game is to, like, deal with one person, Secret Rendezvous is kind of 3 mana, get 6 cards to do that, potentially, right? Like, so there's certain situations where, like, let's say you and the player after you are digging for a board wipe to deal with something, like, that's going to see more cards than any other effect, right? So there is some push and pull to this kind of equity symmetrical card advantage, right?
Well, like we were talking about getting choked on mana earlier. What if there's a player who just really doesn't have any lands to possibly like harm you in any way?
Yeah, then you're kind of playing 3 mana Harmonize, right?
Yeah, you get cards for yourself, and then you're giving them cards to mostly just hit their land drop.
And then discard to turn?
Yeah, like that's a good point. Like you might have somebody has to discard hand size. Like I think I was playing last Friday against our friend Jesse, and he built a Grixis Group Hug Lord of Trestlehorn deck.
Yeah.
And he played Lord of Trestlehorn with no creatures to sacrifice just to have me draw 2 cards. But then I had to discard on my end step anyways, so it was like, huh.
And of course, we're always in the case that, like, drawing 2 and then discarding 2 is always better than...
Still good, yeah. Like, I wasn't complaining, but I was like, well played, Jesse.
Yeah, it's not card advantage if that's the case, right? Or card disadvantage, I suppose I should say. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I haven't played a lot of Secret Rendezvous, but I'm not opposed to it, right? I don't think it's a bad card, per se, especially as bad as people think it is.
Yeah, if somebody was to play a Secret Rendezvous, I probably wouldn't play it myself in most decks, but I wouldn't say, oh, this person's dumb for playing this, or this was a bad inclusion. I'd be like, okay, like I could see some... You could convince me.
But a card that I've played a lot of, personally, is Farsight Adept. And I think I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to cut it from some of my more powerful decks because, we're just getting a lot of good ways to draw cards in white.
Yeah.
But I think Farsight Adept is a pretty cool card. It's just a 3-mana 3/3 that draws a card for me and a card for you. And
yeah, man.
It's just okay, honestly.
Now, if I see somebody playing these sort of cards and they target the person who's clearly ahead,
yeah,
then I'm like, you are so cringe right now, I'm not going to play with you anymore.
You're griefing my game right now. I'm so upset, yeah.
But yeah, I think we've seen in the new Capenna set and in the Commander decks too that this might be a trend for white card advantage. The sort of, I draw a card and you draw a card.
Yeah, before New Capenna we had the Flump card, I believe, right? That was
we
thing?
had the Flump in the D&D set. When it was dealt damage, you and the person who dealt damage to it
drew a
card.
And then there's a couple new cards in this set. Do we want to talk about the bird, or what do you want to talk about first?
Yeah, the first one I want to talk about is Skycrier, which is a common from the actual New Capenna set. It's a 2-mana 1/1 flying and lifelink, so like decent keywords on there.
Yeah. But
it has 4 mana activated ability. You and target opponent each draw a card. So not very like efficient.
Yeah.
But I mean decent keywords. It's a mana sink.
It's an Azure Mage, but with like much better keywords. Like I could see, like, I don't think this card is, like, good, per se, right? Like, it's obviously not pushed or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a card that I would outright discount as, like, a commander, like, be like, oh, maybe that goes in the commander pile of cards, maybe, right? That's what I would think I would do with it.
Right, it's a very interesting thing, and I think, yeah, I'd put it in my commander pile, because mostly, like, what else is that for, really? I guess, like, maybe you play it in limited as just like a 2-mana 1/1 flying and lifelink, and then like you never use that ability.
Yeah, I mean, like if your deck wants like a 1/1 flying lifelink, and like the difference between 1 and 2 mana doesn't really matter that much, having a way to at some point spend a couple mana and then get a card back and maybe give the person in last place also a card to maybe help you deal with something, like that doesn't seem that bad.
Yeah, and if you're in like an aggressive, like maybe like an equipment deck, like not that you would, Spence, because I think like you were saying about Farsight Adept, there's better options, but like if somebody's playing something like your Aurelia deck,
or maybe like, a little budget or something,
or maybe like somebody playing something like my Tajik deck, even maybe like
Arden and Rograk or whatever,
like an aggressive deck that can maybe make it a larger threat.
Flying lifelink, it's good, and then maybe like you run out of cards, you just draw a card, right?
I mean, lifelink is very good.
Yeah,
and yeah, just like you use that card draw ability not as like I'm gonna reliably use this to draw cards. You use it like I'm out of cards in my hand. I need something.
Yeah,
and I have no other way to spend my mana, so I'm gonna dump 4 mana, draw a card, and maybe find. Hopefully, there's somebody who I can harmlessly give a card.
Yeah, or even curry favor.
Yeah.
What else? We got a couple other cards do similar things in this set.
Yeah, we got some from the Commander set that I wanted to talk about. The first one being Tenuous Truce, which is a weird card, but it's a curse, I believe. Sorry, I'm trying to pull it up here. Yeah, Tenuous Truce, 2 mana, enchantment aura, enchant opponent, not a curse. You just put it on opponent. So pretty much a curse. But at the beginning of enchanted opponent's end step, you and that player each draw a card. But when you attack enchanted opponent or a planeswalker they control, or when they attack you or a planeswalker you control, you sacrifice the truce.
So, what do you think of this card, Eli? Because I think I'm a little bit down on it.
It's certainly tenuous.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's the attacking part that really makes it tough to stick around. Because I don't think, if I'm only drawing one card off that turn, or off that
effect.
Yeah, off the effect from that card, that's really bad. That's 2 mana, me and somebody draw a card.
And you don't even, you don't even have guarantee to draw a card, because you don't get it until their end step. So if you play it on someone and you pass the turn, and no one wants to play ball, they can just attack you. And it's gone. It does nothing. Literally nothing.
Yeah.
So
that's the tricky thing.
I could see situations where people want to keep it around, though, and you end up getting an extra card every turn, you and that person. And that's not terrible, but it just seems so finicky. And like it says, tenuous in the name, right?
And it also sucks that you really have to, before playing that card, tell all your opponents about that card that you want to play, and be like, who is going to agree to do this? Because you can't just play it on somebody and then expect that they're gonna play around for it, like you were saying.
And another problem is because it's continuous and keeps giving you guys cards. If someone if that person becomes the threat, especially because you're gonna play this on turn 2 probably, right? If you're playing it, I don't know, it's 2-drop, whatever. They might become more threatening, and then I guess you can turn the truce off by attacking them. But then you're also losing your card advantage. So if it just replaced itself with one card and then gave them a card, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, actually they played a Soul Ring, I gotta turn it off. That sucks.
Or what if they get into that position where they're not necessarily an aggressive deck?
Yeah.
But so you don't have to worry about them attacking you, but they're still presenting a win or a threatening board state. And they don't allow you the opportunity to attack them.
Oh, they just kill all your creatures or something.
They board wipe you, or they keep up removal or something when you go to combat, or they tap down your creatures in some way, and they're like, no. The truce is not over. You and me forever.
Also,
till death do we part.
In the situation where you play this on someone on turn 2, doesn't the game a little bit kind of turn to a 2v2 there, where all of a sudden it's the other players against you two?
Oh my god, Spencer. That way, I need to play this card so I can actually say on turn 2, anyone want an alliance, and then
and have it mean something.
Yeah.
That's epic.
You want to talk about a card we do like, Spencer?
Of course I do.
We got the Master of Ceremonies. 4 mana, 3/4, Rhino Druid. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent chooses money, friends, or secrets. For each player who chose money, you and that player each create a treasure token. For each player who chose friends, you and that player each create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. For each player who chose secrets, you and that player each draw a card.
I freaking love this card, man. This is so epic.
So I feel aside from maybe a Shieldred being in play,
sure,
people are going to be picking money and secrets, right?
Yeah, getting their own treasures, giving you treasures, or getting their own cards and giving you cards. Yeah. I mean, think about it like this. I mean, it is on your upkeep, right? So it's kind of like a Phyrexian Arena kind of thing, right? Where you can't, you don't get it right away. It doesn't get you your land drop the turn you play it.
Right.
But and maybe they're not always taking cards, right? But let's say they all pick cards on your next turn.
At which point you're saying, Spencer and Elijah, you guys said you don't like Howling Mine.
Yeah.
Now, Spencer, you explain why this is way better than that.
Well, you see, when your opponents each get a card off this, you get 3 cards.
You get 3
cards. That's a lot of cards, homie. And, man, you triple each other opponent. I mean, it's technically equal with the table, but, it's so much better for you to get 3 cards versus, 3 across the rest of the table.
Yeah, and like you were saying, so this is on your upkeep, which normally feels like a downside, but since it's on your upkeep, you're the first person with access to those cards.
Yeah.
So you've got your 3 cards to spend right away. They each drew a card. It's whatever.
Yeah, well, let's say you're pessimistic. You're like, okay, they're not going to give me cards because I'm in the lead. They still have to give you something. Even if you're like in the lead, they have to either give you mana, cards, or tokens. And depending on what your deck is, those can all be backbreaking, right?
Yeah, worst case scenario, I get 3/1/1s.
Yeah, or a treasure and 2/1/1s or something.
It's like it's 4-mana 3/4. Like that's
it's solid. It's keeper of the chord stats.
Yeah, I think I might. If that card doesn't end up being super spendy, I might try it out in a couple decks.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like I like this direction of like these kind of white mid range. When I say mid range, I mean like middle of the pack, like mana costs, like it's like 3 to 5, maybe 4 to 5 only, like ways to get advantage and like stuff all over time.
You know what Master of Ceremonies reminds me of is Tempt with Discovery.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing, like everyone can get one of the thing, but for everyone who does, I get an extra one of the thing.
But Tempt with Discovery is optional, whereas this Rhino guy is like mandatory. You have to do one of them.
Yeah.
That's why it's really cool. Right? They have to, right? They have to choose one?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's why it's super cool. I really like it. And sometimes people are just in a situation where they're like, okay, I just need a treasure for next turn so I can play my board wipe or my commander one turn early or something, right? So it's like, okay, yeah, you can get a treasure too. And then...
Yeah, man, I just think people are greedy. If you've got one person that...
takes a card.
Is like 1 mana off from playing something really cool the next turn, they're taking the treasure. If somebody's like missing their land drops, they're taking the card.
Well, also,
there's always somebody.
Imagine like you're the third person on the table, right? Or you're the second person to choose, right? The first person's like, I'm going to get a card, you can get a card. The next person's like, I don't want to be down 2 cards on the table. I'll also get a card. But the funny thing is, well, and the interesting thing with the math is, like, if you'll allow me a moment to explain. Mm-hmm. So let's say the first person chooses a card, right? Then you've drawn a card, and then player A has drawn a card. The next person thinking like, if I take a card here, my ratio of like card disadvantage to the rest of the table is like 1 to my opponent's 3. Whereas if I don't take the card and then the third player takes a card, my ratio is like 1 to my opponent's 4? I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's hard to explain.
No, I get what you're trying to say. Yeah, that's a good thought. Yeah, that's a really cool card.
Yeah, so that's
the
lot...
kind of like you and me card advantage that I'd like to see. Like I'm not so big on things like Tenuous Truth. Even like Secret Rendezvous, I don't know if I love that, but
no,
this is just...
But this is, like, done perfectly, I think.
It's cool. The Rhino Man's got swag.
Shout out to my boy, Young Mage, MTG Young Mage, Rhino.
Yeah, it's the Papa Mage.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we, we've been talking a lot about these kind of parity, kind of equality cards. Do you want to talk about, I know we mentioned it earlier, Eli, but we were talking about wheels and how wheels are like not like these.
Yeah, I was wondering, Spencer, do you think that wheels are ever used in a way that like isn't necessarily to benefit the caster of the wheel?
Never. I mean, even if the effect could be that it actually evens out a game, like that's possible.
Because I know some people who talk about wheels like wheels are terrible in Commander because they're giving your opponents a collective 21 cards against you.
No.
But those same people also like to think about I can do politics, or like I'll help my opponents out so they'll help me out.
Yeah.
But isn't that like kind of, couldn't you say a wheel's that sort of deal?
Oh, you only ever play a wheel when either you're looking for you need like the hidden answer or something, right? Like there's something you need to hit now, or you're just like out of things to do, and you're trying to get more things to do. So it's I mean, I guess technically you could wheel to help somebody out, right? Like you're like, okay, he needs to find a board wipe or something. But like most of the time, wheels are self-interested, right?
Right. So if you're the person ahead against 3 opponents trying to kill you, though, isn't a wheel kind of the worst thing to see?
Yeah, you probably don't want to wheel if your opponents are kind of low on cards.
Yeah, like if you're dominating the game, your opponents are low on cards, and you're mostly like ahead on board. And then one of your opponents plays a wheel, and they're all like, hey, we're coming to get you.
Yeah, no, that could happen. That's definitely the case.
I was just thinking, like, maybe that's
I see you. I see you.
Because that's what I really don't want to see if somebody...
Okay.
If I'm winning the game.
So maybe wheels are even better in those decks that Eli, we're not as big of a fan of. I always say this every time we talk about it. I'm sorry. We're not super high on the 25 plus single target removal spells that it seems like people are encouraging these days. And that's an exaggeration, of course. But if your deck is playing 20 single target removal spells, and you're playing, there's 3 decks of 20 single target removal spells, and you also have a wheel, you're gonna stop that person in the lead.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
That's one of the reasons I like wheels, is because that amount of cards getting drawn, it just allows me to. I'd always rather play fewer removal spells and just more card draw to draw those removal spells.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Because card draw is always good.
Mm-hmm.
Removal is usually good.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't always win games.
Yeah, removal doesn't really proactively get you towards winning. It just stops someone else from getting towards winning, which is important. But, sometimes you'd rather have your own threat.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about equalizing things and catching up to people. People like to talk about White's catch-up cards a lot, Spencer.
Yeah, like catch-up ramp is an iconic, thing that White does, but that's not really what we're talking about today. Not catch-up ramp.
So I wanted to distinguish the difference between what we're talking about and the catch-up cards. People thinking of those as a way to equalize the game. There's a card from Strixhaven Commander decks, the Scholarship Mentor.
Yeah.
That I think it ramps everyone up to the same amount of lands as the player with the most lands in play.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that kind of in a way equalizes things, but
I don't know, because that doesn't often do that though, because some people have more mana rocks than the other people, or different access to what they can do with that mana. So it's not really my favorite kind of effect.
Well, I wanted to talk about a new catch-up sort of card from New Capenna before transitioning into our final little topic. It's the Smuggler's Share. It's a 3-mana white enchantment. At the beginning of each end step, draw a card for each opponent who drew 2 or more cards this turn. Then create a treasure token for each opponent who had 2 or more lands enter the battlefield under their control this turn.
I think this card has been making some waves in the discourse about the set.
It's quite popular. People are hyped for this card. I think its pre-order price is around $20 or more.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And you may correctly not inquire. You may correctly surmise from the way that we're talking that we're obviously not as positive on that card as some other people. Not to say that it's a bad card, of course. Never would say that. It's definitely pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you and I just have a much more pessimistic view of what that card is going to actually accomplish in a game, right?
And we do like to establish things on a worst case scenario basis. Like if this thing does this, is that good? If this draws you 2 cards and creates 1 treasure, that's probably
over the course of a couple turns. That's probably good, right? Yeah.
However, though, like we're saying, over the course of a couple turns, if that's the worst that it does, that's worse than something like a Phyrexian Arena.
Yeah.
Which is a card that many people think is not good enough anymore.
Sure. And I like Phyrexian Arena. And I know you
I love Phyrexian Arena. Yeah, I think because that's consistent.
But if this card is a less consistent Phyrexian Arena, and what it ends up doing is drawing a card every turn, but sometimes not, especially not early in the game, maybe you don't draw a card the first turn, you play it on turn 3 or something. Man, that's just I know White is kind of wants that card draw effect, but man, I've had many games in my white-black deck where I keep a hand with 2 lands, Mana Rock, Phyrexian Arena. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I could keep 2 lands, Mana Rock, Smuggler's Share. I don't think I could keep that hand.
Well, there was a thread recently on Magic Twitter of somebody asking about people's experiences with Mangara the Diplomat, a card that we love.
Yeah, I remember that.
Very good card draw. And I think it was Kristen from the Keg had a good response to it that I could relate with, just because, you got some bias, thinking back on your own experiences with cards, but she said something along the lines of people really be playing around Mangara, but also never paying for Risky Study.
It do be like that sometimes.
And that's really people, I think they get in that mindset oh man, the white card draw spell, I'm going to own the white player by trying to play. I think really people would be playing around Smuggler's Share to not give somebody 3 treasures a rotation or like an extra.
Yeah, I mean,
card.
like this. Granted, this card gets a lot better the stronger decks you're playing against. So like, if every deck you're playing against is playing 10 fetch lands, like I know you can just crack your fetch on another turn and they won't get the treasure, but you don't always have the opportunity to do that. So if they're all playing 10 fetch lands, this card does get better, right? You're going to make more treasures than normal. Or if they're all playing like sources of card draw, like if they're all playing Omnath decks, you're gonna get a couple cards.
What I think one problem with this card is it gives you resources based on your opponents achieving mana advantage and card advantage in conventional ways. Drawing cards specifically and putting lands into play. So if you're dealing with somebody who's getting all their advantage like through the graveyard or like tutoring or stuff or like impulsive draw,
like a Prosper deck where they're getting treasure tokens and then they're casting their exiled cards,
or somebody's just like curving out very efficiently or like doing things, or like even if they're able to just like draw one card on each opponent's turn,
or like a Risic Study or something, right?
Or like they're using like a Thrasios or like a War Room or something, and they're kind of like able to just like do that one per each turn, or like the treasure clause on this, like if they're only like ramping by putting extra lands into play. Like I know like people be saying, oh, green decks are everywhere, but imagine you're in a pod with one green player.
Yeah.
How often do you think you're getting the treasure?
I'm thinking I'm thinking there's like a very small number of cards that actually end up doing that, like putting lands into play. Like you got like a couple swords that do it. You've got like Burnished Heart and like Myriad Landscape and maybe Solemn Simulacrum. And a lot of decks don't even play a lot of those cards. So I think, definitely much more common that someone's going to ramp with artifacts in an average game.
Somebody's ramping with Mana Rocks or even Mana Dork sometimes.
Like if I play if I play this on turn 3, I think the average that I get a treasure by my next turn is, I think the average amount of treasures I get in like one turn cycle after playing this on turn 3 is less than 1. I think the average is like, I don't think, I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't think people are going to be land ramping, especially after this comes out.
So I know it's a very different card. How do you think this compares to Monologue Tax?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think this card... I'm not a big fan of Monologue Tax, personally.
That was another one that was really overhyped when it came out.
I think this is better than Monologue Tax by a decent amount, actually. Not because it makes more treasures.
Oh, well, you know me. The fact that it says draw a card on this one is what tips it over the edge.
But yeah, like we were saying, Eli, I don't like Monologue Tax that much at all.
Yeah. We'll have to see on Smuggler's Share. I might have to buy this precon to get that card, because man, that card
it's gonna be pricey.
I'm not buying that as a single. Don't buy that as a single, people, please.
Yeah, man. Like,
if you really want to, like, trade for it or something, but like, just buy the precon if you're gonna buy that single card.
Yeah,
precon's what, like $40, like maybe up to $50. I think they're up in the prices.
So, yeah, I think because the pack of all 5 is $200, I think. So I think it's 40. Maybe it's a little more though. Actually, might be 200 plus 10. I don't know.
Yeah, there's some other good cards in that deck. So I'd say just if you can, buy the precon and
enjoy.
bolster your binder a little bit.
But I just want to say something about that card. Is that, imagine like you play that on like turn 9, right? Let's just say you play that on turn 9, okay?
Yeah.
And you pass the turn. Do you think that people are putting more lands into play on turn 9, like an extra land a turn? Often?
Thinking I'm lucky to get a turn 9 lately.
Well, sure. I'm saying, I think if I play that on turn 9, I'm lucky to get one card by my next turn, personally. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know people do be drawing cards a lot, but...
Yeah.
Like people need to draw cards every turn?
Well, Spencer, the longest game I played recently was that game a couple Tuesdays ago where I was telling you I was playing my Thalia deck against the AC Tyrant of Gyre Strait.
Gyre Straits, yeah.
And man, even by the end of that game, I think I would have been getting the stuff off Smuggler's Share, but you shouldn't want to anticipate an AC or Tatiova in every pod.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Smuggler's Share is not going to save you.
Although it will trigger both times
It'll trigger. It won't be enough.
Yeah, another thing that's interesting about Smuggler's Share is that it kind of disincentivizes you from stopping your opponents from drawing cards and stuff like that. So like if you're trying to like, there's a lot of white cards that will stop people from ramping or stop people from drawing cards. Those are kind of non-bows with this card, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So like if someone cracks a fetch land, maybe I don't even want to play my Aven Mind Sensor.
You know, though, we were talking about some of these like white, like you and me card draw things, and albeit a lot of those aren't instant speed, but that's Sky Crier.
Yeah.
Imagine you got that with Smuggler's Share.
Oh, you could make them
You curve 2 mana Sky Crier, turn 3 Smuggler's Share, turn 4, give somebody the card, and you get the extra card. Oh my god,
we broke it.
That's insane. That's so awesome.
And then let's say you have a Smothering Tithe out. Those you and me draw cards are really good with Smothering Tithe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Secret Rendezvous. Draw 3 cards, make 3 mana. Very based. Well, do you want to talk about our last thing we have here, right here?
Oh yeah. So overall, is the idea of this episode that really we should just unban balance?
Yeah, because
the most fair card.
Because balance is by far the most fair way to get everyone on the same playing field. There's nothing that could go wrong with balance, right? You know my favorite thing about balance, Eli? My favorite thing about balance is the same thing about like upheaval, where you can just like you can play a balance, but also like float all your mana from all your artifacts and lands, and then just play something after it. It's very, very Giga Chad.
You know, if it tells you like how good balance is, I love the Magi cycle.
Yeah.
The Magus cycle. And they made Magus of the Balance, which was a card I tried to play with for a while.
Is it called Magus of the Scales?
No, it's Magus. They're all like named after
the
card.
Okay. They're named after the card.
Magus of the Balance.
Okay.
And it's a 2 mana 2/2. I can't remember if it has Vigilance. But anyways, it's 5 mana and tap it to get the Balance.
And sacrifice, right?
And sacrifice it, yeah.
And it's not good.
I think I maybe did it once or twice. It did feel powerful whenever I did it. But also, it was rare that somebody allowed that to happen.
Yeah. You know, when you cost 3.5 times as much mana and a turn slower than the regular card Balance, you might think it might be, you know, not as good.
There's a different version of the effect, Balancing Act. The card is like a 4 mana one, but I think if I remember correctly, Balancing Act doesn't have the discard card aspect of that, which is really the most obscene part about Balancing Act or Balance.
Yeah. You can play Restore Balance, but that one is a suspend card. I remember
it's got Suspend a million.
I remember Saffron Olive he made a Plarg deck where the only card that you could Plarg, because Plarg's activate ability is to flip until you get a non-legendary card.
Sorry, I'm a liar. A Balancing Act is each player discards cards. Also,
what's the difference?
Each player chooses a number of permanents they control equal the number of permanents controlled by the player who controls the fewest, then sacrifices the rest. Each player discards cards.
I think the difference is that balance is not all permanents, right? It's like creatures and lands, like they're separated.
I don't think balance affects artifacts.
Yeah, but with this card, like with the card that you were just talking about, you could just keep all your lands.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas with balance, you'd have to go to the number of lands that the other person had. So let's say you play balance and sacrifice all your lands. They have to lose all their lands.
Yeah.
If you played this other card that you were talking about and then sack all your lands, they could just keep their lands.
Never mind. Balancing Act is based. Like that discard cards ability on that card is amazing. We love that.
Yeah.
I should try that card out.
But I was saying Saffron Olive made a Plarg deck where Plarg's 5 mana tap ability is to flip until you hit flip from the top of your deck until you hit a non-legendary card that costs like 3 or less or something.
Oh yeah.
And Restore Balance was the only target, so his point was, or actually I think I lied to you. I think he did it with the red one. That like shuffled all his stuff into the deck and put permanents into play.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But you could build that with Restore Balance if you wanted to be a dick.
I know Mitch did that.
Ah, he did?
Yeah.
Very epic. But yeah, don't actually unban balance. That would be probably a mistake. Certainly a mistake. But it's got beautiful art.
It do.
Well, do you want to talk about this last thing we got on the topic now that we've kind of finished with our equalizer stuff?
Yeah, that's all we've got on equalizers for today, everybody. But we wanted to give our 2 cents on. We wanted to give our EDH takes.
Yeah.
What was the Twitter account of somebody who asked for EDH takes? and invoke.
Oh yeah, I'll have to
summoned
put that
us.
on the screen. Can you
Was playing with
imagine?
power?
Yeah, they asked for everyone's EDH takes, and they stole it from us. They stole the name.
Infringed on our intellectual property.
They'll be hearing from my lawyer.
Note to self: get lawyer.
Yeah. But no, we want to talk about maybe this is a cancelable opinion, Eli, in today's climate of Magic cards, but we're going to talk about treasures and
There's
how
a lot of treasures in New Capenna.
and even other sets leading up to New Capenna. I think just to put it all out in the open, I think we are much less pessimistic about the direction of Magic and treasures than most people that I've seen talk about it online.
Yes, I think there's a sort of the sky is falling thing about treasures. I mean, people make the associate, like we were talking about, like the power imbalances in games mostly being from mana disparity.
Yeah.
People see treasures and think, oh my god, it's just more of that. But this is worse this time because treasures are the thing that Dockside Extortionist makes and Smothering Tithe makes.
Oh my
and
god.
Hull Breacher made.
Therefore, these other cards that might do it in a maybe more fair way all of a sudden have bad juju.
Yeah, so I think it's people are saying mana bad, cards that made treasures bad, so treasures bad.
Yeah, that seems to be the case.
It's guilty by association.
Yeah. Well, why don't we start off by talking about Bootlegger Stash, because this is a card that has been making waves. I've said that like 3 times this episode. But honestly, Eli, I just don't think it's that good. It's just to tell you what it does. It's a 6 mana, 5 and a green artifact that says your lands you control have tap to make a treasure.
Spencer, hadn't you ever wished that Horizon Stone was 1 more mana, but let you get colored mana out of it?
Haven't you ever wished that Brass's Bounty could be cast every turn?
Oh my! I fucking hate Brass's Bounty so much.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that's a card that anyone has ever played in Command. I don't understand it.
So I understand that there is synergy with treasures, and cards will do things like give you extra treasures or do other things.
That's why the Horizon Stone example isn't perfect, because obviously I understand they are very different. There are many things to be done with the treasures, and their treasures are much better than keeping the floating mana as colorless mana.
Yeah.
In many ways. But really, is the overall effect that much different?
Is it worth casting a 6 mana artifact? 6 mana artifact, you could play a Sunbird's Invocation from it. You could play a Bolus's Citadel. You could play, you could play a Sun Titan.
So, more so what Bootlegger Stash is like than Horizon Stone or Crewfix would be the OG of this effect. Omnath. Omnath is 3 mana. So you know how Omnath goes. Turn 1, and I have a friend who plays a very good Omnath deck, and so it goes turn 1, Mana Dwarf.
Yep.
Turn 2, Omnath. Turn 3,
nothing.
I float that mana.
Yeah.
So they float the 4 mana on turn 3.
Yep.
Turn 4,
you play a 9-drop or something.
They have 9 mana.
Yeah. Do you know how smugglers...
How do you do that with Bootlegger Stash?
You go... maybe you play it a turn early or something. Whatever, you play it turn 6. 6 mana.
I go turn 6. Turn 7, I stash 7 mana.
Turn 8.
Turn 8, I have 15 mana.
Epic. How do you get away with that? Ever.
It's like, okay. So
Good.
You know what else does the same thing, but better in most instances? Mana doublers.
Yep.
And mana doublers can give you...
double mana the turn you use it.
They just do so much. I don't know, man.
Yeah, man. I feel like Bootlegger Stash is just like, oh, but you could play Corval and you could make a bunch of treasures and draw a bunch of cards. Yeah, Corval doesn't need help to make treasures and draw cards. So the reason that I think you and I are coming so hard against this Bootlegger Stash card is not because it's like literally an unplayable card.
Yeah, so if I saw somebody playing Bootlegger Stash in their commander deck, I'd be like, okay, I wouldn't play it. Like I was saying about Secret Rendezvous, I wouldn't play it, but if somebody else played it, I'd be like, fair to them. I could see their reasoning. But if I saw somebody playing, they roll up to the shop and they're like, check out this sick new single I just pulled, or like I just bought from the shop.
I just spent $30 on this Bootlegger Stash.
I just spent $30 on this.
I would, yeah.
More like bootleggers trash.
Exactly.
Because that's the only acceptable way to get one, is pull it out of the trash.
Yeah. Now let's talk about a card that's based as fuck and not cringe.
A much more dangerous card than bootlegger's stash.
Professional Facebreaker. This card is like, I would call this card like 9 times better than bootlegger's stash, I would say. That'd be my napkin math. If I recall correctly, it is a 3-mana 3/2 with Menace.
2/3.
2/3,
yep.
similar. 3-mana, that might even be better in this case. 3-mana 2/3 with Menace, and it says, whenever one or more creatures deals damage, combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. And it also has the ability to sacrifice a treasure to impulsive draw the top card of your library, and you can play it this turn. So, do you know the card Malcolm? The partner from Commander Legends?
He's always a good one.
Malcolm is the same as this, except
Malcolm's just pirates.
Malcolm is just pirates,
Yeah.
and Malcolm also doesn't let you just draw cards. And Malcolm is really, really good. This card is kind of actually ridiculous, I'd say. Like, I don't know, man. It's just the fact that you can make a bunch of mana and also like have, outlets to draw more cards with it is really good, especially in like an aggressive deck. I know you were telling me, Eli, about how you have your Tajik deck, which doesn't play 3-drops, because Tajik is the 3-drop.
I might play some very good ones, but they've got to be pretty good or like very on theme or synergistic to like make the cut, because it's very awkward.
Mm-hmm.
But this card, like, I could play that on 3, make 2 treasures, and then it just gets better after that. Like every next
Every
turn
turn,
after that.
yeah.
Like,
It's got evasion itself, too, if you give it haste
play
or
the
something.
next turn, play Tajik, mentor onto this 2/3 menace, make it a 3/4 menace, hit 3 different players.
Draw some cards when you run out.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Have enough treasures to literally, like, I could be tapped out of lands, still sacrifice a treasure to impulse draw and probably cast that spell.
The thing that's so good about this card is, like, worst case, it's still, like, just going to make a treasure every turn, probably, because you can probably get in with Menace. And if you can't, maybe you have another creature that can get in or something, right? And then it's kind of like, what's the mono-red creature that when it attacks, it's a legendary creature, when it attacks, it, like, makes it like, impulse draws or something? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Lelia, the blade reforged, I think.
Worst case, this is kind of like that, which is kind of fucking epic.
Yeah, so do we want to say, like, Spencer, I think initially when you were talking to me about this card, you felt like it was maybe a little potentially problematic. But I wanted us to talk about how if this card was problematic, it's not because of treasures.
Yeah.
It's because it does a thing which, like, we'll talk about Chulane a lot as being a card that gives you card advantage and mana advantage on the same card.
Yeah.
And that's what this does. And it does it very efficiently.
That's what's so powerful about it. Like, I don't think it's, like, the most broken thing in the world, right? Like, it's not literally going to end the game right away, but it is a way to start making mana early, like, in the game, while also being a card advantage engine. And that's what's so scary.
You know the one thing that mostly keeps this card in check? I mean, there's some decks that will prove this wrong. Like, if you play it with the Dockside Extortionist, good enough, like, whatever. But I think it's mostly good in aggressive decks, which Commander players be like, oh my god, I don't want to have to attack people.
Yeah, no, that's true. You really do want to be playing 1-drops and 2-drops in this deck. So I guess that's nice, because if you could curve like Mana Rock into this and still get like a trigger that turn, like that probably would be even better. But the fact that you kind of have to forego your maybe turn 1 or 2 like ramp strategies is probably good. Like, for example, I built Malcolm and Tevishzat deck, and I don't play 2-mana rocks in that deck because I want to play a evasive pirate so I can play Malcolm on turn 3 and get a treasure. This doesn't have the consistency of being in your command zone, but any deck that plays like 1 and 2 drops will love this card. Especially because at that point in the game, you're going to be able to get in at somebody.
Yeah, that's our strong card pick of the month.
That's a card I love. And it's like $5 as opposed to $30, so...
Well, fingers crossed that it doesn't. People don't get wise on that one, but
yeah,
I think Command Zone was pretty high on it.
No,
yeah, it's gone.
Shoot.
One more treasure making card we wanted to talk about was I think I've mostly seen people on Magic Twitter pretty positive on this card, Spencer. Spiteful Repossession, 5 mana sorcery. Deals damage to each opponent equal to, or each opponent who controls more lands than you, equal to the difference. Then create a number of treasure tokens equal to the damage dealt this way. How many treasures do you feel like that makes on average?
On average, like, when am I playing it? Like, just whenever?
Like, let's say you play it on turn 5. Like, you've just, like, hit your land drops.
Probably making, like, 2 or 3 treasures, maybe? Depending on where I go in the turn order, right?
Yeah, I think, what was the phrase you coined? Schrodinger's green player.
Yeah, who, at the same time, will have 40 lands in play on turn 6, but also, you know, you can stop them with any, you know, effect that you know, but also, like, catch-up ramp, you know?
Yeah, but, like, catch-up ramp isn't
good enough because, yeah.
But this is a card, this is, like, the opposite of that, like, catch-up ramp thing, where people saw this card, and whereas, like, if it was a white catch-up ramp card, they'd be like, oh, that's not good enough, it's not going to do anything, but people saw this card, and they were like, oh my god, that's amazing, it says treasures on it. It's strong.
So, I'm on, like legit, though, So I understand that treasures are more valuable than just red mana, guys. I get that, okay? I get that. Are you listening to me? I understand that. I'm not trying to be super patronizing. It's just the way it's happening, okay? But for cards like these, it really do be kind of like a ritual, right? It's like, deal some damage to everybody, and then maybe you get, maybe like good case, you get 5 mana back, right? And, man, just... And by the way, it's not 5 damage to everybody. It's like 2 damage to you, 1 damage to you, 2 damage to you. But man, like, if this card isn't just like a worse mana geyser, right? Like, by a lot.
Yeah, and it also, I think people see a card like this and think, oh, it's finally something to deal with those dirty green players. What's it do to them?
Take 6.
Worst case, yeah, like, there's the green player that ramped to 10 lands on, like, my turn 5. Yeah, take 5 damage. Got him. And then I
get
some treasures.
So I spent my 5 mana to get 5 mana back, right? It's like, oh wow, you really did that.
Yeah, I don't care for, you know, if this card feels to me, Spencer, like, sure, treasures are going to be a thing, and there's going to be good treasure cards. There's going to be really bad treasure cards.
Yeah,
it's going to balance. It's just going to have to be up to how good they make the treasure producers, I think.
And there are a couple treasure payoffs, right? And they are good. But man, if those cards don't suck when you don't have any treasure cards, like the Academy, whatever, the artifact creature that like makes you more tokens when you make like a treasure. Oh yeah,
it'll give you a clue and a food.
It's like, and like, what if you don't draw your 6 treasure cards in that deck? Like, oh, that card sucks ass.
Yeah, so really, I mean, to me, treasures just feels like any other recurring mechanic. Like, it's up to them to like keep the dials reasonable. Like, obviously, Dockside Extortionist
is the dial the 10.
Was
11.
A mistake.
Yeah.
Was a bad thing. Smothering Tithe, I could pretty arguably, like, a lot of people hate that card. I don't think it's really that bad.
I'd go under Dockside Extortionist, but still up there.
One of the strong ones.
Yeah.
Old Gnawbones. God, people hate Old Gnawbones.
Below those two, though.
Way below.
Way below.
But it's a green card, so it's better.
Yeah. Yeah, Eli, I mean, I get that Old Gnawbones makes a bunch of mana, but, like... Man, if it's not... If Magic players and they see a green 7-drop be like, I can cast this on turn 3.
Yeah. Wasn't that one of the like tweets we saw about Bootlegger's stash being like, 6 mana is really like not
a lot, guys. Deck. It's not a lot in green.
Like, I could play that on like turn 5.
Just to go back to this spiteful... what's it called? Spiteful what?
Repossession.
Right, repossession, just for a moment, because I think we would get comments about this if I didn't say it. I get that you can use damage doubling or tripling effects to get more treasures. It's still a worst mana geyser. If you triple the damage and you end up getting 15, 18 mana geyser makes 26. Okay, guys? Just letting you know that. So, I'm I get it. It does some damage. I just wanted to say that. Mana geyser is way better than this, and this card's worst case is really, really, really bad. Literally nothing.
Yeah, I guess there's sort of a meta consideration at play. Like, if you're playing with people who really actually do get like obscene amounts of lands, and that's just a thing that happens. Maybe, yeah, if you're playing like that kind of deck that has like mana doublers and stuff, It might be cool. Like if you've got like some weird like Gisela deck or something.
But man, if you're really putting in like a card, like if I'm putting in a card to like hose a strategy, right? Or, something like that. I really want the card to be good on its own, like when you're not against a strategy, at least permissible. I guess if you're playing like a deck that can like rummage things away so that just like you just don't have to cast this card if you draw it in like 90% of games.
Yeah, that's
probably
we kind
it.
of talked about on that like building for the meta episode about like cards that like are good against like any commander pod.
And this is not.
Yeah, I don't think so.
This is good against specific things, yeah.
Well, yeah, is there anything we want to say about Treasure, Spencer? Just, I think it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay, guys. Treasures are a part of... do you want to talk about... I think we should talk about this for a second, just because it's been a hot-button issue, and we should give our EDH take. What do you feel about the idea of green getting artifacts that produce mana, Eli?
Okay.
Just give us the lore.
So...
On the Magic Twitter and YouTube and stuff.
There's been a lot of controversy around Bootlegger's Stash because it's a green artifact and it also makes artifacts, and people are like, green is not the artifact color. That might be true. New Capenna is a pretty cringe place. It's a giant city.
Yep.
And also, treasures, while they might be artifacts, I think it's important to like help define what exactly an artifact is in the context of Magic. Every color is allowed to have artifact cards in it. And also, an artifact isn't necessarily a piece of machinery.
Yeah, it's not mechanical inherently.
I think in Midnight Hunt, there's a green equipment called Bramble Armor, which is clearly like a druid wearing like some freaking like spiky twigs, like some bramble, or things like Wanderer's Twig.
Yeah. That's
an artifact. Artifacts are inanimate objects.
Sure.
And a treasure, you would think, well, treasure is money. Okay, that's a man-made thing. That's a man-made construct. But treasure, in the context of Magic, while the tokens might represent things like money or gold or gold,
treasure chest or whatever, right?
When they depict jewels, now jewels technically are a thing of nature, and that's the thing that people like to say, well, nature. Green is the nature color, so everything has to be nature.
So what about a vein of emeralds in the side of a mountain? That's I'd call that treasure, right?
That's nature up until the point where a human touches it, and then it's not nature
So the thing is, Magic players would think of like harvesting gems, right? And they'd be like, okay, harvesting like with a pickaxe, that's like a red thing, right? Mm-hmm. That's what they'd think. But all of a sudden, imagine like an elf like Lord of the Rings style like treehouse kind of society, right? Imagine like that, if you know what I'm talking about, like the elves of the not, you know what I'm talking about, the ones they live in trees and stuff, right? And imagine that they harvest the energy from emeralds and sapphires to power their nature stuff, right?
Or even it doesn't even have to be like gemstones, because then you could argue well, stones are in mountains which are red. It's like, okay, what if there's this group of okay, so we got our stupid squirrels in Magic, right? We got Chatterfang or whatever, and he's got his gang of squirrels, and he's like, you know what's our treasure? Fucking acorns.
Yeah. I'm gonna go put acorn in a tree. That's treasure.
That could be treasure.
Actually, though, it could.
Literally, or just any magical object or something.
Sure, and it doesn't even have to be magical. It could literally be some sort of some sort of bird's nest created thing or whatever, but it's like a holy bird or something.
Well, I wonder if the idea of treasure in the context of at least the game of Magic, because I don't think it's necessarily in the lore. They would be oh, and this thing made me some treasure tokens, and I spent them to cast a spell. I don't think that's a thing that's happening anymore. They don't write Magic stories like that anymore. But are treasures implicitly magical because you're sacrificing them to add mana, which is exclusively used to cast spells?
I think you could argue no, I don't think they have to be, right? Because the gold tokens and stuff like that, and treasure that's jewelry and gems and money, those aren't magic.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, like, within the game functionality
sure.
part of it, like, you're sacrificing them to get mana.
Yeah, I get you there.
So, and you're casting the spell, which, like, spells necessarily, like, aren't always, like a creature, like, isn't necessarily, like, magical or, like, an artifact or something. But, like, you within the game, I don't know, yeah, it's a weird thing. Like, it's very, very deep to, like, define exactly what is treasure.
Yeah.
What do they say? Somebody trashes another person's treasure. So
yeah. Well, I remember seeing Pleasant Kenobi talking about this concept on Twitter and pretty much being like, I just can't see smother or bootlegger stash. Sorry, it was spoiled as smuggler stash, but the translation is bootlegger stash, and I can't go back. But he got Mark Rosewater to respond to him, and they kind of had a couple back and forths on Twitter, and the end result was just Pleasant Kenobi being like, "Sorry, I can't see it. I don't get it."
Sorry, Morrow, you're wrong about magic design.
Well, he didn't technically say he's wrong. He's just saying like, I can't see your perspective, more or less.
Like, yeah,
and it's a little weird. But yeah, I guess like I thought that Morrow, I'll put it on screen, but I thought that Morrow explained it pretty succinctly.
There's some things I might slightly disagree with Morrow on, but generally, if I got a direct response from Morrow on like my questions about the color pie, I'd trust that answer at least a little, like, consider it.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Okay. Let me ponder this.
Yeah.
For more than a couple hours and then or a couple minutes, then respond saying I don't get it. No Flame, I don't know. That's exactly what he did. That was just kind of me throwing some shade. I'm sorry. I take it back. But yeah, you guys got a nice long episode here after being gone.
This is our treasure to you, is doing the bare minimum of what's expected of us. I'm sorry about that, and we're gonna come back at this and try and keep the quota from now on. The semester's almost over. I've got a couple things to wrap up, but yeah, exciting times, and we're gonna keep coming at you with some more EDH takes. I've been Elijah Samuelson.
And I've been Spencer Cook.
Make sure to follow us on Twitter. Give us a subscribe so we can get that subscriber count higher, so I can look more impressive to strangers.
So you can impress your the person giving you a random test.
My tormentors.
Yeah.
And give us a comment. What do you think about Equalizers in Commander? What do you think about treasures? What do you think about New Capenna? I've been pleasantly surprised.
I like it too.
Better pleasantly surprised than Pleasant Kenobi.
All right, see you guys.